Vision News, wherever the news and whenever the news is breaking. Vision News will bring you the news every day, 6 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m. Listen to Vision News for the most authoritative news. Vision FM 92.1, your most authoritative source for news. And that is confirmed.
This Week in the News. Welcome to this week's edition of This Week in the News. It is a summary of stories that made headlines in our bulletin during the week. We begin the review with Monday's bulletin. In the news on Monday, we brought you a report that President Bola Tinubu has in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, called for an end to Israeli aggression in Gaza, warning that the conflict in Palestine has persisted for far too long, inflicting immeasurable suffering. While addressing the extraordinary Arab-Islamic Summit convened to address the current situation in the Middle East, President Tinubu expressed deep concern over the humanitarian conditions in Gaza. He reiterated Nigeria's call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and affirmed the country's support for a two-state solution where both Israeli and Palestinians could coexist in security and dignity. The Nigerian president noted that the solution remained a viable path to lasting peace in the region, stressing that as representatives of nations that value justice, dignity, and the sanctity of human life, it was imperative to collectively bring about an immediate end to the conflict. He also heard that the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, said his administration will continue the demolition of shanties in the FCT and no amount of protest can suppress them. Wike stated this when he paid a visit to Ruga community located along the Wye axis of Abuja, where he said the administration will dialogue with occupants of the shanties and come up with long-lasting recommendations which will keep them off from establishing their communities illegally. He described the protest which was staged last week Friday, which tagged him as a grabber, as misplaced priorities. The protesters had called for the minister's sack for demolishing their illegal settlement, claiming it was built by their forefathers. But the minister said no amount of intimidation, blackmail or abuses by the illegal occupants or civil society's organizations will stop the government from doing its job. He expressed worry that the area had been demolished 22 times and yet the illegal occupants have refused to leave. He asked the spokesman of the illegal occupants to nominate 5 persons, including himself, and meet with government officials on Tuesday to find a way out for the people.
If anybody ever come put something here again, this opportunity where they give around, one I will bring 5 people to come talk to government. No could say we should do of them, that will not happen again. Make nobody say in they put anything here. And all those who are they will bring for television, whether abuse government, may they come and talk say we can leave us on it. Those who need their work. All those who they find where they will collect money from. We will do our work. We no go fit allow wetin go bring problem for Abuja. I understand your plight. We understand, that's why I'm giving you this opportunity of 5 of you to come. We could just see what you go fit do.
In another report, we told you that the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development has decried the impact of building collapses across Nigeria and has assured that punitive measures will be imposed on those who violate building codes. Director of Planning, Research and Statistics at the Ministry, Mohammed Bala, disclosed this in Gombe at the opening of the 5-year 13th meeting of the National Council on Lands, Housing and Urban Development, noting that efforts were ongoing to address their issue. While lamenting the frequent building collapses across Nigeria, Bala said housing and building collapse is not just about the house, but about the lives of the people. Still on Monday, we informed you that a former Vice President, Atiku Abubakar, has insisted that President Bola Tinubu's economic policies and approach to governance are killing Nigerians. Atiku urged President Tinubu to focus on solving the problem rather than attacking the opposition, which is not in the saddle. The Tarakin Adamawa stated this in a statement signed by his Special Assistant on Public Communication, Frank Shaibu, in Abuja, while responding to an earlier statement issued by the presidency, which said that Atiku's criticisms of Tinubu's policies were driven by jealousy. He made reference to the announcement on July 8, 2024 by President Tinubu that import duty on essential goods like food would be lifted for 150 days, but to declare that over 120 days later, the policy is yet to take off, while Nigerians continue to die daily due to increasing costs, including food inflation, which now exceeds 40%, the highest in decades. The ex-vice president also said that the brazen disregard to a government policy by the president's appointees and the failure of the finance ministry to issue a gazette after over 4 months reflects the incompetence that characterizes the government. From the international scene on Monday, you heard that Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has demanded that Israel immediately stop its military aggression in Gaza and Lebanon at the opening of a summit of Arab and Muslim leaders in Riyadh. In an address before the Joint Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit, the Crown Prince condemned the massacre committed against Palestinian and Lebanese people. He urged Israel to refrain from any further acts of aggression while calling on countries around the world to recognize the Palestinian statehood. From the world of sports, it was reported in our news bulletin that Bendel Insurance were to forfeit 3 points and 3 goals for an assault on match officials during their 1-0 home loss to Kano Pillars last Saturday. The Nigeria Premier Football League took the decision after receiving the report of the matchday 11 encounter played at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium, Benin City. On Tuesday, you heard in our news bulletin that Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, Prince Mohammed Al Saud, has assured Nigeria of support for its economic reform programs after meeting with President Bola Tinubu. The assurance came when the leaders met on the sidelines of the Joint Arab Islamic Summit. According to a statement by the presidential spokesman, Bayo Onanuga, the two leaders explored potential areas for cooperation, particularly oil and gas, agriculture, infrastructure, and the constitution of the Saudi-Nigeria Business Council. Nigeria sought an agreement with the Saudi government over a proposed $5 billion bilateral trade facility between the two countries. The Saudi Agricultural and Livestock Investment Company invested $1.24 billion in 2022 to acquire a 35.43% stake in Ola Magri, one of Nigeria's leading agricultural firms. In another report, we told you that the Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption and Financial Crimes is set to increase the annual budget of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for optimal performance. Chairman of the committee, Senator Bende Emmanuel, disclosed this during an oversight function to the Commission's headquarters in Abuja. Senator Emmanuel also said the EFCC deserves certain percentages of proceeds recovered into the federal government's purse for effective running of the Commission.
Well, I totally agree that EFCC needs more funds from the type of work they do. They need a lot of money. If you can just take one software, say he needs a software, just a software that will take up to 3.something billion. What we can do is that through budgeting process, we will be able to also increase their budget, and then through legislation. When he's talking about proceeds of crime, once they recover these funds, we can tax a percentage, like custom do. They are entitled to a percentage of whatever they get for the year. And if you do it to EFCC.
Earlier, the EFCC chairman, Ola Olukoyede, pledged his commitment to tracing assets of financial crimes and moving against dollarization of the economy, which he said is reducing the value of the naira.
From the day you start your investigation, make asset tracing as part of your critical responsibility. And as long as you do that, you discover that you should price them of some of these assets that they can use to fight you. So when you lay hold of that, you weaken them and make your job easy. So we have made asset tracing and recovery one of our key principles. Oh, you recover so much. Where is the money? What are they doing with the money? Nigerians, you understand that there is what we call the direct recovery and indirect recovery. Direct recovery goes directly to the federal government. Indirect recovery goes to the victims.
Our correspondent Babatunde Ayeni calls the EFCC chairman as saying that the Commission's 2023 annual reports have been submitted to both chambers of the National Assembly as required by law. You heard in our news bulletin on Tuesday that the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has called on the general public to imbibe healthy home hygiene, safe food storage, and preservation practices to curtail the impact of an eventual onset of Lassa fever, with cases being expected in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Director General of the NCDC, Dr. Jide Idris, who stated this in Abuja while issuing a media update on Lassa fever and meningitis outbreaks, recalled that as of October 13, 2024, 8,569 suspected cases of Lassa fever have been reported, with 1,035 confirmed cases and 174 deaths across 28 states and 129 local government areas of the Federation. Dr. Idris said the NCDC has already engaged state ministries of health through provision of advisories and training of frontline workers on case diagnosis and management.
And people most at risk for Lassa fever. One, people of all age groups who come in contact with the urine, feces, saliva or blood, or the droppings from these infected rats. People living in rat-infested environments. People who consume potentially contaminated foodstuff, especially those left open overnight or dried outside in the open. Healthcare workers, including doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers who provide direct patient care in the absence of standard precautions. Hospital staff who clean and disinfect contaminated surfaces, materials and supplies without adequate protective cover, and laboratory staff who handle blood samples of suspected Lassa fever patients without appropriate precautions.
He also warned that the period for cerebrospinal meningitis outbreak is close at hand and advised against staying in crowded and unventilated enclosures and to avoid close prolonged contact with a confirmed case or its relative.
Although meningitis affects all ages, the most at-risk persons are young children, especially those under or not immunized at all, individuals living in overcrowded households, individuals who smoke, individuals exposed to poor ventilation and indoor air pollution, either from cooking with wood or charcoal, those with poor hygienic practices, that is poor cough etiquette, people just cough anyhow without covering their mouth, or people who don't practice hand washing. These are examples of people again who can spread this.
From the international front on Tuesday, it was reported that a New York State judge has paused proceedings in President-elect Donald Trump's already decided criminal case and charges stemming from hush money paid to a porn star. The judge, Juan Merchan, had been set to decide on Tuesday whether Trump's conviction could be vacated due to the Supreme Court's July decision on presidential immunity. Trump had also been scheduled to be sentenced on November 26th. In sports, you heard that Benin Republic head coach Gernot Rohr has defended the inclusion of Remo Stars goalkeeper Sergio Bassa in his team for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Nigeria and Libya. Bassa was a surprise inclusion in the 25-man squad released by Rohr last week. In the news on Wednesday, we brought you a report that the federal government said it required $10 billion public-private partnership investment in the power sector in the next 5 to 10 years to achieve uninterrupted power supply. Minister of Power Adebayo Adelabu disclosed this when the Director General Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, Dr. Jobson Ewalefo, paid him a courtesy visit. Ifeanyi Nwoko, acting head of media and publicity at ICRC, noted in a statement that Adelabu said the government alone could not afford the $10 billion when there were other critical sectors in need of funding. The power minister said his ministry needed the ICRC in order to be able to collaborate with the private sector through concession. Speaking earlier, ICRC Director General said it had become imperative to seek private sector input through public-private partnership to improve the power sector. It was also reported in our news bulletin on Wednesday that the World Health Organization has urged Nigeria to urgently take action against climate-related disease burden in the future. WHO's head of mission and country representative in Nigeria, Dr. Walter Mulombo, gave advice during the Nigeria Health Sector-wide joint annual review in Abuja. Mulombo said the alarming forecast that 21% of Nigeria's disease burden could be climate-related in the near future underscores the urgent need for transformative action. We also told you that the United States Africa Command, US AFRICOM, has commended Nigeria's approach to combating insecurity. The command also commended Nigeria's strategic leadership in the West Africa sub-region. The commander of US AFRICOM, General Michael Langley, gave the commendation when he visited the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, at the Defense Headquarters, Abuja. The US AFRICOM is one of the 11 unified combatant commands of the United States Department of Defense in Germany, responsible for US military operations, including fighting regional conflicts and maintaining military relations with 53 African nations, except Egypt. From the foreign scene on Wednesday, we informed you that the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has assured NATO that the Joe Biden administration will strengthen its support for Ukraine in a few months before Donald Trump's return as president, and will reinforce the alliance in that time. Meeting NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Brussels, Blinken also said the deployment of North Korean troops to help Russia in the Ukraine war demands and will get a firm response. President-elect Donald Trump, who has questioned U.S. military support for Ukraine, says he will quickly end Russia's war without saying how, raising concern among U.S. allies he could try to force Kyiv to accept peace on Moscow's terms. In sports, we brought you a report that former heavyweight world champion Mike Tyson has said that he was just fine and downplayed his health concerns, but was taking extra precautions, asking those around him to wear a face mask before Friday's controversial bout with Jake Paul. Tyson has not competed in a professional bout since 2005, while YouTuber turned boxer Paul has won 10 of his 11 pro fights. The contest at Dallas AT&T Stadium has drawn criticism from the boxing community because of the age gap between the pair, and after it was rescheduled when Tyson had a stomach ulcer in July. Next is Thursday's review, but that will be after this break.
However the news, wherever the news, and whenever the news is breaking, Vision News would bring you the news every day, 6 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m. Listen to Vision News for the most authoritative news. Vision FM 92.1, your most authoritative source for news. And that is confirmed.
Alright, welcome back. If you're just joining, this is This Week in the News. The leading story in our news bulletin on Thursday was that the federal government has proposed a sum of 47.9 trillion naira's budget proposal for the 2025 fiscal year. Minister of Budget and Economic Planning Atiku Bagudu disclosed this to State House correspondents after the Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Bola Tinubu in Abuja. Bagudu also disclosed that the Council approved the medium-term expenditure framework for 2025 to 2027. He said the government pegged the crude oil benchmark at $75 per barrel and oil production at 2.06 million barrels. Also, we told you that the federal government has announced a $134 million loan obtained from the African Development Bank to support farmers' enhanced food production. Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Abubakar Kari, who disclosed this, said the loan will play a crucial role in strengthening Nigeria's food security drive. At the launch of the 2024-2025 National Dry Season Farming Initiative in Calabar, Cross River State, the minister emphasized that the reintroduction of National Dry Season Farming aimed to facilitate year-round agricultural productivity. The project is part of the National Agricultural Growth Support Scheme, Agro Pocket. According to a statement issued by the ministry in Abuja, the initiative seeks to ensure that all Nigerians have affordable access to nutritious food. Still on the news on Thursday, you heard in our news bulletin that Vice President Kashim Shettima has announced that President Bola Tinubu has approved the establishment of a new disease relief fund to strengthen Nigeria's humanitarian response system. Shettima revealed this at the launch of the Humanitarian Supply Chain Management Partnership for Localization Project held at the Presidential Villa Abuja. The Vice President was represented by the Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Office of the Vice President, Senator Ibrahim Khadija. He explained that the fund will provide immediate assistance to disaster victims nationwide with a view to complementing the broader localization framework. Shettima said the initiative, which aligns with the Nigeria Localization Framework, sought to empower local actors and leverage local resources to address the country's growing humanitarian needs. From the international belt on Thursday, you heard that a new study has unveiled that the number of people dying because of the civil war in Sudan is significantly higher than previously reported. This was between Sudan's army and the paramilitary RSF has killed tens of thousands and forced millions from their homes. More than 61,000 people have died in Khartoum State, where the fighting began last year, according to a report by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine Sudan Research Group. It said that of these, 26,000 people were killed as a direct result of the violence, noting that the leading cause of death across the Sudan was preventable disease and starvation. In sports, we told you that the Nigerian winger Ademola Lookman has been named among the nominees for the 2024 Best Men's Player Award, part of the annual Globe Soccer Awards hosted by the Dubai Sports Council. The Globe Soccer Awards made the announcement via X handle. We told you on Friday that President Bola Tinubu has honored the late Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Tauri Lagbaja with posthumous national honor of Commander of Federal Republic to appreciate his invaluable contributions to Nigeria. President Tinubu announced the honor at the National Military Cemetery in Abuja during his speech at the burial of the late Army Chief who died last week after a brief illness. The President immediately paused and requested Maria Lagbaja, the widow of the late Lieutenant General Lagbaja, to come forward to receive the award medal.
It has been said that the brave never die. Their courage serves 1,000 living men. So be it then, may the courage with which Lieutenant General Lagbaja served and now shine for live in each and every one of us. While we are saddened by his passing, we still celebrate his life. Thus, we must rededicate ourselves to the principles and love of a nation for which he stood.
President Tinubu had earlier led a crop of top political office holders, security chiefs, family members and friends of the late Lieutenant General Lagbaja to bid farewell to the 23rd Chief of Army Staff. In another report, we informed you that the National Bureau of Statistics had said that Nigeria's headline inflation rate increased 33.88% in October 2024. The Bureau disclosed this in its Consumer Price Index and Inflation Report for October 2024, which said the figure is 1.18 percentage points higher compared to the 32.70% recorded in September 2024. It said on a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate in October 2024 was 6.55% higher than the rates recorded in October 2023 at 27.33%. In addition, the NBS said on a month-on-month basis, the headline inflation rate in October 2024 was 2.64%, which was 0.12% higher than the rate recorded in September 2024 at 2.52%. Still on Friday, we brought you a report that the Supreme Court has dismissed the suits instituted by 16 states governments against the Attorney General of the Federation, challenging the constitutionality of the acts establishing the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and two other anti-corruption agencies. The other agencies are the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, and the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIU. The Apex Court dismissed the suit for lacking in merit. While delivering the lead judgment, Justice Uwani Abba Aji ruled that the states were completely wrong in holding that the EFCC established by an act of the National Assembly was an illegal and unlawful body. Justice Abba Aji, leading a 7-member panel of justices, also ruled that the EFCC Act, which was not a treaty but a convention, does not need the ratification of the Houses of Assembly. The Apex Court had earlier dismissed all objections of the federal government to the suit filed by the states. Justice Abaji said the plaintiff's case was against the Attorney General of the Federation and not any of the agencies mentioned. Hence, the Supreme Court has jurisdiction to determine it. The suit, which was initially instituted by Attorneys General of 16 states, saw the scrapping of the anti-graft agency. From the international scene, you heard in our news bulletin that the World Food Programme, an international organization within the United Nations that provides food assistance worldwide, has urged safe passage for food aid to Sudan's North Darfur and South Kordofan states. The WFP said on its social media platform X that for the first time in months, there are multiple WFP convoys of food aid heading to Zamzam in North Darfur, where famine was confirmed, and Kadugli in South Kordofan. The program confirmed that has the food, the trucks and the staff on board to ensure that the aid gets there, but needs all warring parties and armed groups to allow the vital food and nutrition to arrive safely. In sports, we told you that the captain of the Cheetahs of Benin Republic, Steve Mooney, has blamed the team's failure to convert their chances for Thursday's stalemate against the Super Eagles of Nigeria in the Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. The Ghana draw side were held to a 1-1 draw by the Super Eagles in the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying match day 5 encounter in Abidjan. Centre back Mohamed Tijani gave the Cheetahs the lead in the 16th minute. The hosts created numerous chances afterwards, but were let down by poor finishing. With our sports story on Friday, we have come to the end of This Week in the News, a review of stories that made headlines during the week. On behalf of my producer Babatunde Ayeni, your narrator has been Abbas Umar Farouk.
However the news, wherever the news, and whenever the news is breaking, Vision News will bring you the news every day, 6 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m. Listen to Vision News for the most authoritative news. Vision FM 92.1, your most authoritative source for news. And that is confirmed.